Ahoy there, fellow travelers. Welcome to E-Travels with E-Trules, a personal and literary podcast of travel adventures and misadventures from around the world. This is Eric Trules, and thanks for listening. Welcome to another behind-the-scenes episode on the E-Travels with E-Trules podcast. I'm Eric Trules, and today I'll be talking with Liz Femi, a fellow solo performer and friend who was born in the United Kingdom and grew up in Nigeria, a country not many tourists or travelers know much about. Liz is a small, smart, beautiful, and feisty young woman who her mom describes as a really bendy, bouncy branch connected to a strong Nigerian oak tree. But before I start talking with Liz and have her take the Trules travel quiz, I want to thank my listeners for sticking with the podcast as we head towards the finish line of Season 1. As of today, I've released 11 episodes over the last 22 weeks, and I thank everyone for their enthusiasm and loyalty to the show. I hope to make it 20 episodes before taking a break to recruit the funds for Season 2. I'll let you know a little bit more about that at the end of the episode. But now, let me tell you a little bit more about Liz Femi. As I said, I know her as a solo performer, as I helped her develop her one-person play, which she wrote and performed herself. It's called Take Me to the Poorhouse, and it is an autobiographical comedy about a middle-class Nigerian third grader who dreams of becoming poor, in order to win the love of a poor classmate named Yemi. The full-length monologue made Ms. Magazine's top 10 shows of the Hollywood Fringe Festival, won a Best of the Fringe Award, Best International Show, and earned an NAACP Theater Award nomination. Liz studied at the University of Rochester in its International Theater program, and she holds an MFA in acting from Harvard University. She currently has a recurring role as her namesake, Liz, an ambitious writer's assistant on Love, a Netflix project co-produced by Judd Apatow. She's recently acted opposite David Duchovny and Amy Poehler, and she lives in Studio City, California, not far from Universal Studio, but a long way from Nigeria. When not acting or writing, Liz enjoys making books by hand and collaborating on experimental projects such as a science fiction web series about a comic book store owner who sends people back to slavery via time travel. Liz's mother is proud of her, but she doesn't quite dig the concept. Welcome to the show, Liz.
Hi, Eric.
Nice to have you here.
Pleasure to be here.
I think we should try to stir your memory about the country you spent some time in and grew up in, Nigeria. As I said, most of my listeners and I myself don't know much about the country. It has some scary political references these days. Mm-hmm. But why don't you start wherever you'd like? How did you get from the United Kingdom to Nigeria? And along the way, I think the listeners can look forward to some excerpts I've asked you to read from your show, Take Me to the Poorhouse. So let's have a good time.
Of course. My parents were in school in London and working as well. And so they had me there. And we eventually moved to Nigeria when I was about 5 or 6. A lot of my memories about Nigeria, aside from the pretty, I don't want to say, kind of volatile economic, political landscape, although a lot has changed over the years. I mean, with globalization, there's so much happening and it's changing quite rapidly. But a lot of my memories are very personal. Growing up first, I remember living in my grandfather's house where all his kids, his children, my dad was the eldest, and their siblings and all the kids were living in this small house. And so it was the first time I remember sort of having that extended family experience, which is so different from living with just your parents and your sister. Because you trade a lot of stories. You compare your experiences from school. We used to do funny things like eating competitions to see who would eat the fastest, and I remember there's this scientific theory that like kids who can't delay gratification usually have some sort of, you can usually tell if you give a kid candy and tell them to wait to have the candy. If they do something else, do they go and grab the candy? But I remember we would sit around and we would be eating, and I couldn't wait to eat my meat at the end. Most kids will wait to eat the meat at the top of their rice at the end. And I would just stare at the meat and just start to take little bites of it. And I was the only kid who could not wait. All of my siblings would eat the rice and eat the meat last, but I couldn't do it. And I don't know what that means today.
I think it means that's why you became an actress.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, you had strong impulses, and that's why you're good on camera and hopefully on podcasts too.
Yes.
I've been reading this incredible book called *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari. I discovered it by the founder of the TED Talks. He was doing an interview with Harari, who's an Israeli. And this book is the history of humankind from long before cavemen, from Cro-Magnon to the species sapiens, all the way through the development of different empires, caveman empires, agrarian, agricultural society, industrial society, and how humans have changed from hunter-gatherers to shoppers.
And tweeters.
And tweeters in chief. But he said one of the biggest changes in the history of mankind and living in civilizations was the change of societies, particularly Western societies, of losing its central natal family. Mm-hmm. And because my wife is from Indonesia, mm-hmm. and maybe you grew up in a simpler society than modern Western America, it really makes a difference. My wife's family is the most important thing to her. She speaks to them long distance all the time. We've brought our nephew here to adopt him. She wants family to be the most important thing to him. And I think we lose that as a career and job opportunity, and so many other things take us away from the connection to family and ancestors. Children no longer take care of aging parents and grandparents. It's just a different world. So I think that's one of the most remarkable things about traveling to third world or any other place in the country, just in the world, mm-hmm. to see how different societies are organized, and both the profits and values of contemporary life with all our technology, and then all the things we've lost along the way.
Yeah, you're right. I think that's so funny. I think one of the reasons I read a lot about childhood is because I remember a lot of my formative years were within a community of some sort, where you would come home from school, you would see the same people, you know, your neighbors in Nigeria, they could chastise you. Like if you're eating someone's fruit or doing something you're not supposed to do, they would say, hey, stop that. It wasn't like a weird thing where it's like, we're crossing boundaries, telling the neighbor's kid what to do. It was a very communal aspect to raising children. And there's something about that I feel like really fortifies a kid's character, because you're being encouraged or chastised by different people. You know, they're building your confidence together. They're helping you develop your moral compass. And but particularly, I think for a kid's imagination, you're trading stories with the neighborhood kids. You're trading myths. You're trading urban legends. You know, you're making them up about the woman across the street who sells things and you swear she's a witch, and you come up and add more to the story each time when you come home from school. I think that's why I particularly love To Kill a Mockingbird, because of Scout and Jem's and Dill's experiences in Macomb and how they would go around and go to Boo Radley's house and make up these stories. Because that feels so real to me. That experience feels very familiar.
I think that you captured that in your own show, telling childhood stories and having the central character be a third grader.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we jump in and give the listeners a treat of a little section of your show,
Okay.
and let's see where it takes us.
Wonderful. So I should preface this by saying, so in this section of the story, the character is named Lizzie. She has a philosophy about poverty and poor people and how they have guts and they have soul, and you just something about what they've been through really gives them a wonderful, I guess, spirit that she's lacking as a middle class child. And so right now she's going to talk about her a particular kid in her class named Yemi and what she thinks of him. Poor people say the most electrifying things, like my secret husband in my class, Yemi. When Yemi gets excited about something, he says, "Well done." But not like how I just said it. He says, "We're done." So he will say something like, "Did you watch Transformers yesterday? We're done." It's things like that. Fiery tongues and fierce temperaments beaten into them by a ruthless life. Where is a London-born, middle-class, average-looking Nigerian with stingy hair supposed to get that kind of spirit from? The way I see it, rich people are already enjoying their share of life, and poor people are gifted with wit. But if you're in the middle, what is God supposed to do with you?
It's so charming. I remember hearing these stories week after week as you were developing them, and everybody would fall in love with these kids, and we'll meet another one later.
Yes.
Somehow, this middle-class New York Jew, me, married a third world poor girl from a small town in Sumatra. And it's been quite a challenge and quite a journey. The best and maybe hardest thing I've ever done. And now we have a 10-year-old boy. But some people say, "Oh, what a nice thing you've done. What a wonderful thing adopting the boy." I never had any plans or ideas about it. It just happened. Life is what happens while you're waiting for your plans to work out. But through my wife and my son, I see such beauty and simplicity and un-Western neurotic stuff. The boy, I'm just trying not to screw him up. There's something beautiful, and perhaps I'm romanticizing, but since I live with these two people, there's something very un-Western and un-American and un-neurotic, and sure, they aspire and are learning about American culture, and they both had to learn the language, and my wife went to ESL school, and my boys go into elementary school, but there's something pure that you've also captured in your show, and whether it's Nigeria or Indonesia, it's unique.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that, I mean, even when I haven't been home back to Nigeria in a very long time, and so to some extent, I feel like even my memories are romanticized, you know what I mean? But when my friends and family visit and they come and they tell me, oh, now we have this and this mall and that mall. And there's a part of me that dies a little inside. I'm like, oh, but is the tree that was in front of the house that's still there? No, there's a chemist there now. There's a pharmacy or whatever. Like, things have changed so much. And I'm trying to hold on to them as much as I can.
So many of the people and the residents in poor countries have been influenced, near brainwashed by Hollywood images and Western culture, seeing our movies and our commercials, and everyone has to have a TV and an iPhone and an iPad and drink the right products. And yet, what I was just talking about before, and your character, you as a young girl, aspired to be poor,
right?
And yearned towards the undeveloped and the simplicity and the beauty of more natural instincts and humanity, like family. And it was a funny thing to hear your character Lizzie want to be poor, and the whole concept of the show was an aspiration to be poor.
Yeah, I think it's a I think you're really hitting something there with, it's a connection to something really deep that seemed to have been covered by a veneer of aspiration for middle class or, upper middle class aspirations that her family has. And while obviously it's a privileged point of view to have, because she doesn't know what it's really like to live in circumstances where you can't afford to take care of your family. I think beyond that, what she was seeing was an unfiltered connection to life that she was missing. Albeit naive, but it was still something that she sensed.
We loved the boy characters who were poor, but had this joy and simplicity about them. And believe it or not, that's what I see in my 10-year-old boy, Axel, so much joy. And it brings, whenever I'm wrapped up in my own stuff and worried or whatever, all he has to do is poke his head in and say, "Trules," and he makes me laugh.
Oh.
So somehow through your show, I'm reconnecting to that, clown in myself, you know, that always aspires towards innocence and childhood beauty and, innocence.
Right.
Okay.
Do you still clown? I mean, I've seen pictures of you with really fascinating, you have a very expressive face. So and I've seen you do a range of, like, it's, how when you normally see a clown, it's like, oh, that's a happy clown. We know what's going on. But your clowns there's like, I don't know if it's irony. There's something about their expressions that there's so much depth to them.
Well, I never studied circus. I'm not interested in pies in the face or a red nose and God forbid what's happened to clowns. They become the evil killers in the world, but clowns were there to make people laugh and to relieve them of their pain. So I think any comic, whether they're stand up or otherwise, has to be in touch with their own pain. So since I try to empathetically touch those chords inside people and allow them their vulnerability, their pain to connect with me, and elevate it by touching them with this clown spirit.
Right.
My clown is a troublemaker and a empathy giver at the same time. Let's break the rules. We don't have to listen to anybody. Let's speak truth to power. The king, we're stronger than the king. My clown would go out and direct traffic in the middle of New York City, and the cops would hold my hand, and we'd do it together. So it was a great vehicle to be an artist and a humanist at the same time. But I don't do it much anymore, almost none, although in the bathroom the other day I was saying, you have to go out and clown at Union Station. I wonder how long they'll let you be there, but I think you have to do that, Trules. So I'll let you know how that goes.
I would love to see that.
I'll invite you down there.
I wonder what sort of national security risk a clown at Union Station would pose, but we'd find out in a couple of minutes, I guess.
I think so, yeah. Yeah. Who's that masked character? What kind of trouble is he making for our society?
But there's something about inserting that kind of point of view in a place like Union Station, you know? It stirs things up. And I think that, as you said, like, the stories that move us the most are the ones that are sort of unlike a balancing line of like tragedy and comedy and a confusing, it's like a weird, it's vibrating between both, you know?
I always think that the most powerful art and the most touching movies and books are the ones that make you laugh and cry in the same moment. You know, Chaplin and Pathos and, all good emotional movies touch that part of you that make you want to laugh and cry at the same moment.
Yeah.
Not sorry for that detour, but back to Nigeria.
Yes, let's go.
Tell us what we don't know about the country, even from memory, and what it's like, its geography, its people.
Right. So I was trying to think of I know we had talked about the fact that maybe it's not the most touristy place. A lot of people go there for business. Obviously, there's a lot of oil, there's cocoa. A lot of the chocolate factories export cocoa from Nigeria. But one tourist experience that I remember growing up is there's a state in Nigeria. There's a town in Nigeria called Abeokuta, which means under the rock. And in Abeokuta, which is where my mom is from, there is a giant rock called Olumo Rock. And this rock was a site of refuge and a fortress in the 19th century. There was a bunch of wars that was happening there. And the people who hid in the rocks used it, like I said, as a source of refuge and as a fortress. But when you go there today, you see how they managed to create life within a rock. You know, they created these man-made steps, and there are these crevices where the priestesses found a way to make a shrine and a bed at the same time, because they were so close to praying and to life at the same time. It was what they needed was a shrine and a bed, and they made just enough space for that. And each crevice has a story of the people who live there. Were they hiding or were they attacking? Was it the vantage point? It's a really fascinating piece of history that you can read as you walk through the rocks and the crevices.
It sounds almost like cave painting or something like that.
Yeah.
And magical, which older societies, prehistoric and human societies naturally had. They paid more attention to the rhythms of nature, and they worshiped the sun and the goats and the crops. And now there's one monotheistic, dude we're supposed to pay attention to. But we've lost the magic and the wonder of rocks and their history and their power. And I'm not even sure. I hope you can tell me who colonized Nigeria, and was it, did slaves come from there? And what was lost when the great Western civilization came there?
So, it was originally the Portuguese, and then it was the British, but I can sort of explain that through my own family's history. So my original last name is actually Wilson. And there are a lot of people with British last names in Nigeria. And my grandfather used to tell this ridiculous story. He said that the reason we were called Wilson was because there was a missionary whom one of my ancestors worked for, and the missionary was named Will. And Will, considered my ancestor his son, and people would call him Will's son, which is a little paternalistic story in my opinion. But I think the real story is that, so we're from Lagos, and Lagos is an island, and there was a lot of slave trade on the port of Lagos, between Lagos and the Caribbean and America and all around the world. So it's hard to tell when people have English last names if they were part of that trade. So my family technically might originally be from an island that was brought to Nigeria or traded or whatever. So because a lot of Lagosians have British last names, you really don't know exactly where they might be from. They kind of were transitory in a way. So I think, because I've, and also obviously because of British colonization, some people might have just picked up names of whoever the colonial lord of the house was or something. But yeah, I think it's pretty fluid, that port, the Lagos Island itself. And my family also part of my family is also from Togo, Republic of Benin, and a couple of other countries in Nigeria. And I think there's something to be said about the fact that when Nigeria was being colonized, they essentially took a bunch of countries and added a line, a country line around countries that were not meant, different tribes that didn't speak the same language.
That's how they mapped out Africa. And
Yeah.
that's how they mapped out the Middle East.
Exactly.
And not based on cultures or tribes or faiths. And Western culture did that to the conquered land, right?
Mm-hmm. It was pretty arbitrary.
Yes.
There are arbitrary lines. And that's why there are over 500 ethnic groups in Nigeria. There are 3 main languages, and even within each, my family speaks Yoruba, but my mom's dialect of Yoruba is different from the dialect that my dad speaks. And I don't even understand, when she goes to the village, I don't understand that version of Yoruba, and it's still the same language.
Can you speak any Yoruba?
Sure. So let's see, if I were to say, Ekaro, Mr. Trules, Bawoni, Shidadalewa. Which means, good morning, Mr. Trules. How are you? Are you doing well? If my mom were to say that with her dialect from Abeokuta or Ijebu, it would be completely different. And it's the same language.
I'm familiar with that because of my wife. They had Indonesia's 17,000 islands, and of course, so many different dialects. They made a national language called Indonesian, so they teach all the children the Indonesian language in school, but go to any island or any part of an island and they all speak their own dialect. So she's from a tribe called Batak, and not everyone, not all the new kids can speak Batak anymore. The grandparents do,
Right.
but all the new kids have been learned to try to speak this common Indonesian language. So
Right.
it's probably something like that.
It is exactly like that, actually, because English was the national language, quote unquote, and we took Yoruba as a language at school. But the thing interesting about the language is it's so tonal that you would have the same, like a lot of Asian languages, the same spelling for words, but a different sound on that spelling is a completely different meaning, which is why I got F's in Yoruba when I was in school. It was pretty bad. But here's another problem with having a last name like Wilson. So people with Yoruba last names have epic poems that go with each name. I think the Irish did this too, where like you have, when you have a last name, there's like a story that goes with the name. But in Nigeria, that's essentially that. So the assignment was for us to all go home, learn our epic poem. It's called an oriki. So go home and learn your oriki over the summer and come back and you're going to perform it. Now, my last name is Wilson. I don't have an oriki. So all my friends like the Adeshinos, Adekunle, Baba Tunde, whatever, they would go home, come back and learn and perform their poem. So I had to make one up. And I just knew that there was a trope, which is like you say something, oh, hunter of the people in the valley who comes and takes the blah, blah, blah. And so I came and I was like, Wilson, oh, Oma Loriola, Oma Jagudaewe, Bidio Basi, Ileke Oniduro. And then which translates to, Wilson, oh, Wilson, you child of glory, you thieving child of thieves, you if without the behind, the necklace cannot sit properly. It just didn't make any sense. And I got an F. But I went home and I performed it for my dad, and he and his friends were dying laughing.
It made me laugh.
And so from now on, his friends, when they see him, they perform my fake Oriki for him. And they go, Wilson, child of thieves.
Where does Femi come from?
Femi is actually my middle name. Oh. My full middle name is Olufemi, or Oluwafemi, which means God loves me. Femi means love me, is essentially what it means. It's a unisex name, actually. Mostly men are named Femi in Nigeria, hence Femi Kuti, Fela Kuti. Oh, yeah. But I just decided to adopt it as my stage name when I got here.
Another literary or book reference. I'll bet you know the book Americana.
Yes, Chimamanda. Yeah. Adichie.
What do you think?
I haven't finished reading.
Me either. I stopped in the middle.
I haven't.
It's long, but I'm enjoying. I listen to a lot of audiobooks.
Me too.
Oh, so
I love
audiobooks.
Yeah. I also have a bad habit of reading 3 books at once. So
I've gotten to that bad habit. I used to read one at a time.
I can't do it.
I heard a tone. Oh, it's from a phone. I think that's a cue for another story.
Ooh, let's do it. All right. So in this part of the story, we're going to meet another kid in Liz's class. His name is Wale. Wale likes Lizzie, but Lizzie is not a fan of him because he's a bit of a troublemaker and it's just rubs her the wrong way. So he's walking her home from school. She did not request this walk home, but he insists. They're walking together and he has a test for her. I'm just walking with you. Plus, I have a test for you. I want to see if you're smart enough to pass it. What test? Just listen. Do you know there are kidnappers looking for human heads and private parts for juju to make money? They sell them in the plastic bags in the black market. Eesh, no they don't, Wale. What's a black market? The darkest market in the world. But why would... Shh! Imagine if that taxi driver and his passenger run after us, blindfold us, and put us in prison in an abandoned building so later they can chop off our heads and sell them on the black market. What would you do? Chai, I don't know, Wale. What would I do? If they're kidnappers, they're probably alcoholics. Maybe I can poison them. What? How? When my prison guard drinks himself to sleep, I'll reach through the iron bars, grab his palm wine, and urinate inside it. When he wakes up and drinks it, he faints. Let me finish. Then I will reach for his keys in his pocket with a stick I've been hiding in my uniform. Then I will come and save you. Okay, you score half points. But how can we leave without the other kidnappers catching us? Let's leave during World Cup soccer finals, so when the men are drinking and shouting at the TV, we can jump out the back door. Psh, that's stupid for 3 reasons. 1, you have to guarantee that Nigeria will qualify for the finals. 2, I don't know where you pick up the stick or how you hid it in your uniform. And 3, you can't just live like that. What if they come after us? You have to set the house on fire before running away to make sure you're not followed. It's common sense. Who do you think you are, Wale? Sylvester Stallone? So yeah, that bit reminds me of walks home from school and just taunting each other and making up stories and pretending people were going to kidnap us and just coming up with adventures about what we would do to escape.
All kids should still live that way, right? With their imaginations and adventures.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's time for the Trules travel quiz.
Ooh.
Are you ready?
I think so.
Where were you born?
I was born in North Middlesex, England.
Where are you from?
I am from Lagos, Nigeria.
Where do you call home?
Oh, man. Now I call home Long Beach. But I still say Nigeria.
What's your favorite place in the world?
There was a waterfall in Switzerland that my husband and I visited. I don't remember the name, but it was in the Alps. And it was the most magical experience I've ever had.
How magical?
I felt it was just otherworldly, but at the same time, it felt like the most natural place to be. Like it felt like I was with myself, that feeling that nature gives you. But I think it was the sound of the water and the fact that we were isolated in the mountains and seeing the white on the water from the waves, from the cascading falls. And it was like an entire mountain, but a waterfall. I'd never seen anything like it. It was majestic.
I think you're going to give that same answer to a question coming up.
Okay. I might have another one.
Are you a traveler?
I am actually, yeah.
What do you think it means to be a traveler?
I think traveling really is about seeing the things you already know differently or think you know differently. It just does something to your senses. I think it's essential for us to remember that we're on Earth. It's so funny how you can do the things you do, go to the grocery store, go to work, and forget that you're on a planet. But when you travel, you remember, oh yeah, we're on a rock and it's moving around. And everyone around us is doing the same things, but it's still this giant rock we're all on. So travel reminds me that I'm on a planet.
That's a good one. What's one place you've always wanted to go where you've never been?
Bali.
Really?
Yes.
I wish I could invite you to our little villa that my wife and I have there, but we've rented it out for
I
a
know,
year,
I saw the pictures. It's so beautiful.
That's where I met my wife, too.
Oh,
It's very hot there.
I
But
hear.
I'll bet Nigeria's hot, too.
No joke. It's ridiculous.
Is it humid, too?
It's very hot. It's like, it doesn't make sense how hot it is. It's a level of hot you can't comprehend, especially when you've been away for so long. Your skin is different. And so people can tell, oh, she hasn't been here for a while. She's sweating like a pig.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife used to take 3 showers a day because she lived in Bali.
Yeah.
And she used to eat nothing but hot, spicy food. And things have changed.
Yeah, exactly.
They can look at her skin, sweat or not, and say she's not from Medan, Sumatra anymore.
Yep.
Well,
Even the mosquitoes can tell.
yeah, I think so.
The blood is different.
Yeah. I hope you get to go to Bali.
Yeah, me too.
What's your favorite city? Why?
My favorite city. Man, has to be Lagos. Oh, for the food. The food is so good, Eric. Oh my God. When I think about how much, it's so funny when I have these weird daytime daydreams or fantasies, whatever, daydreams of going back home to eat. But then if you have a camera in my face when I'm eating, I bet you I will cry. I bet I will cry because the food is just so good. Yeah, Lagos for the food mainly.
I don't know why I never thought of this before. It's not about the food. It's about my wife's best friend, Isabel, who's from Senegal.
Oh.
I don't think you've met, but you should really meet her. I have to go out of my way to introduce her.
Please, I'd love to.
Yeah, she's awesome. I think you answered this, but let's see. What's your favorite park or non-urban place? Why?
My favorite park or non-urban place. There is another non-urban place that I like. Our bus got stranded in Scotland, and I don't know what this place was. It looked like that one moment in Braveheart where she comes out of the water at night. But I have never seen water that still in my life. We all got off the buses. We were waiting for it to get fixed for like 3 hours. And it was the most still I've ever seen a body of water. was amazing. Is it really my favorite though? Because I only went one time and it was by chance. But I think if I were to speak locally, then it would probably be, Central Coast of California. When you're driving on the 101 and then that's the PCH.
PCH
yes.
up along Big Sur and
yes.
that twisting, beautiful
California
mountain highway.
Is beautiful.
It is. But I like those broken down moments in travel that you can't predict and you can't book in advance. And the bus breaks down and there you find the stillest, most perfect body of water you've ever seen in your life.
Exactly.
Yeah. Pretty nice. What's your favorite mode of transportation?
I envy bikers. I never really learned how to bike. I'm so jealous of bikers. I can bike, but I can't bike in traffic. So my aspirational favorite mode of transportation is biking.
If you go to Southeast Asia, you will learn how to ride a small 100cc motorbike and you'll get out of traffic and you'll realize another fantasy of yours. It's so much fun and so free
I bet.
Be out in it. Yeah, it's really good. Who do you like to travel with?
I love traveling with my husband.
Well, you weren't married when you were putting together the show. I don't think I know your
We
husband.
were not married then. We were engaged. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Tell me 30 seconds about your husband.
My husband is from Michigan. He's a white man from Michigan who is so funny. He actually went to school in Russia for 4 years. He studied at the Moscow Art Theater, speaks fluent Russian. But he's not an actor. He works in marketing now. And what's interesting about us when we travel is just in general is I can get very lost in my head. I just float to the clouds and I want to do all these blah, 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 ambition, do this. And he's like, great, here's a sandwich. You need to eat. He just grounds things in a very real human, I know it's just the basic, simple things of life, warmth, nurturing, connection, adventure, curiosity. We both love to get lost in places and try local food that you wouldn't buy at a restaurant.
I'd marry him.
He's great.
2 forks diverged in the road. Which way would you go?
Oh. Dang.
You have to see her eyes flashing.
See, my problem is I always want an out clause. Like, I always need an out clause. So if I go the less traveled way and I'm like, okay, this is kind of boring. Let's go see what everyone else has done. I can just backtrack and then go check it out. So I don't mind if it's a well-worn path, I guess, because if I get bored, I'll just make my own anyway.
You could go either way.
I could go either way. Yeah, it's fine. I just need an out clause.
I have a friend who I can't go to any events with because he insists upon taking his own car because he wants to leave when he wants to. And he anticipates doom, being of my tribe, and faces his car facing out in his own driveway.
That's awesome.
Last question. Where will you go when you die?
Where will I go when I die? Oh, man. What a beautiful question. Oh, I'm going to go hang out with my grandpa. We'd go to a cliff and just sit there. It would be with my grandpa for sure.
Back in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Well, that's a nice place to end end, even though I don't want to. Anything else you want to talk about, travel or the podcast or anything we missed?
This was such a pleasure. It was such a delight to talk to you again about the story and to learn a little bit more about you and your life and to remember our process in creating the story together as well. I'm really happy to see how you've connected your life into this podcast. I mean, I've listened to the previous episodes and I really enjoyed them. And even as a guest, there's something about reflection that's powerful for both the host and the guest. You know, it's a shared experience in a room. You know, we're in this closed space and we're talking about this, but it feels something about it feels endearing and necessary.
Well, I greatly appreciate your being here. Thanks for being on the show, Liz.
Thanks for having me, Eric.
I hope my listeners have enjoyed your insights and musings about your unique journey from a small village in Nigeria to the big stages of Hollywood's film and TV studios. Listeners, if you'd like to learn any more about Liz or stay in touch, you can go to lizfemi.com. I'd also like to thank you, my audience, for listening today and to invite you to leave comments on my website and to listen to any of the previous episodes you've missed, all at erictrules.com/podcast. Any ideas you may have in terms of donations, advertising, or sponsorship for Season 2 would also be greatly appreciated. If you're listening on iTunes, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Any questions for me about anything, leave me a message at erictrules.com. Finally, please tell all your friends. The podcast grows one listener at a time. Until next time, happy trails. Original music composed by Amanda Yamate. Sound engineered by Scott Barber at the Barbershop Recording Studio in Echo Park, California. Produced by Harry Duran at Fullcast. This podcast has been supported with a USC Capstone Grant. Special thanks to Phil Allen and USC's School of Dramatic Arts for their support.